Good morning, everyone, and welcome to GPA Trading Services live trading class on this Tuesday, February 9th, 2016. Great to see all of you with us, so pleased you could join us on this Tuesday morning. And let me give a nice big shout out to our dear friends in archive land as well. Now, how about that Super Bowl? I hope you guys had a chance to watch the Super Bowl on Sunday. Gary and I were thrilled that Peyton Manning and the Broncos won. We admire Peyton Manning and have enjoyed him over the years. He's a homeboy from Louisiana. So we were glad to see they pulled it out and won the big game. It's a nice game indeed. Did y'all watch it? I hope y'all had a chance to watch the Super Bowl. It was pretty good, pretty exciting. Commercials were odd and unusual, say the least. Might have been one or two good ones in the mix, but most were pretty odd. I guess they thought they were clever, but we thought they were kind of strange. But anyway, we're ready and raring to go this week. So I guess we'll just jump right on in and get going with today's session. Good morning, Andres. Good to see you. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy. And here's Gary. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. As you know, today is Tuesday. Gary's Market Forecast, or GMF. It's the heads up on what's going down in the markets. But first, we have very specific rules of engagement. Those include the following. Do not trade with money you cannot afford to lose. Always trade with protective stops. Make certain the 4-hour, the 1-hour, the 30, and the 15-minute time frames align prior to trading with the MPA PE3 software. Also adhere to very strict money management rules, which include never risking more than 2% of your entire account balance on any one given trade. For options friends, never risk more than 5% of your entire account balance on any one given options trade. And finally, all information provided by GPA Trading Services is for your educational purposes. So please give me a minute as I open up the charts. All right, thank you, James Brown. Good to see you, my friend. Let's pick up with the euro. The euro has grinded higher. After we broke out of this little wedge formation, we rallied up towards our do not cross level, which we finally broke out above 110.86, which set the tone for this deeper retracement. And as we're seeing this deeper retracement unfold, we are expecting at some point we're going to resume the downtrend. And I have some new labeling for you. First off, if this is the bigger wedge formation with the A coming down in B, we're working on our C higher, whether it's getting complete now or we go a little bit higher. The next do not cross level based on this ABC formation would be this 117.12, in which we should not see price move above this 117.12. This is a wedge A, B, C, D, E. Then the C is not allowed to go above the A. So that is a do not cross level that price must stay below the 117.25. So I'm going to go ahead and create one of those right here and change that to 117.12. For your viewing pleasure. So we should not expect price to go above 117.12. And regardless if this is this A, B, C, D, E scenario where wave B is not complete, or the alt count is this wave B is complete and we're in the beginning of a subdividing A, B, C, giving us a 1. This is part of a wave 2 correction, which in both cases is not allowed to go above 117.12. in which we would expect this to top and roll and start heading down, whether it goes to 3, 4, and 5, or it does a C, D, E. So James, the question is this B wave here done and we're moving lower in C, or is it not complete? So if it is complete, we're going to go with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If it's not complete, we're going to go with this A, B, C, D, E. Now we won't diverge on the 2 or C scenario up and until price starts to move lower. And the difference would be if it's part of the wedge, then price must not break below 105.19. Where if it is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scenario, we do expect a break below 105.19. So once we finish this up move, we start moving lower. If price is able to break down and go below 105.19, then we're going to say that wave B here is already done. If price reverses and moves down but does not break below 105.19 and presumes to bounce and then go back up to this area as my C, D going up in E, then we're going to go with the fact that it is, in fact, wave B still unfolding. Well, what does that have to do with me successfully trading the euro? Well, it's based on the signs and symptoms in the cycling time frames. So the euro was able to grind a little bit higher, but as we look at this reversal, we see that we had a B, for example, or my 1 going into a little move higher, which there's no surprise there because we talked about the daily turning over to the downside. And our daily hasn't turned over. Yes, it's completely overbought territory, but it hasn't crossed to the downside yet. I haven't seen the PAI cross an angle down, nor have we seen the price action indicator not only not turn, but certainly the trend momentum has not crossed. So that's why up and until the daily PAI and trend momentum cross to the downside, we can't expect a huge move down, in which once this 2 or my C wave is done, we're going to expect a strong move down to the point where it should not break 105 down here if it is the D going down. But if it does come down and stair step and break 105, then of course we're going to look for that to be that 1, 2 going down in 3. So motto is, how much higher can the euro go? It could grind higher, and as long as my daily trend momentum and PAI remain up, we certainly can continue to grind higher, but we're not eligible to go on and break 117.12. So Gary, could we go up towards 114? Yes, it's possible, but again, we're interested in watching and giving us signs and symptoms when this rally up is over and when the downtrend continuation is unfolding. So up and until we see the daily PAI and trend momentum start crossing downward, then we're likely to see this grind a bit higher. And of course, when the daily trend momentum is flat to down, in this case flat to up, I would say the PAI is not quite flat, but it's flattening out. The trend momentums are clearly straight up with angle and separation, and yes, they are in overbought territory, but as the PAI started to flatten out, slightly angling toward flattening out, the trend momentum didn't flinch. So what happened? Our 4-hour kept slingshotting higher and higher as it's been grinding and grinding, and yes, we've made another new high today. Well, same rules apply as I said previously. As we're getting into these overbought territories, and I'm long on these slingshots, etc., I would peel off a little profits because we are due for another little sideways to lower. Even if it's just a temporary correction before another push higher, we're still due for another one while the workforce and the foremen start to depressurize. And as you go through the time frames, we can see on the 1 hour The 1 hour did slingshot higher beautifully, so this is what we're talking about. Came down, here's Ichimoku at its finest. Came down to the purple line, basically the cloud here, bounced, and how did we know it was going to bounce? Well, James, as I was watching this pull back, I was looking for an opportunity to trade the euro, in which I was able to take a long trade because as we moved down toward the cloud and the purple line, we saw a beautiful 1 hour slingshot. Combined with that 4 hour had turned back over and turned back up at the same time, and the daily was still up. So Al, this is why we say this every day. As long as my trend momentum and PAI remain up, then we're going to expect further upside. No surprise. And no matter how much we want this to reverse and start heading back down all those hundreds of pips, we can't confirm that until we see price action proving its intentions. Meaning the higher time frame, not only do the lower start to turn back over, but my higher start to turn over, and we get signs and symptoms of a high, a low, a lower high, a lower low, a lower high, a lower low, a lower high, a lower low. And during this corrective phase, my daily never turned. So yes, on a 1 hour, we see it's been slingshotting up, back down, back up, back down, back up, back down, back up. But what's been consistent in this sideways movement? The daily trend momentum and PAI have been up. So this was not a reversal here. It obviously made a new higher high, and we saw signs of that by the daily remaining flat. As far as the PAI was slightly up, trend momentum is clearly up, but basically we said even if this flattens out and it's flat to up, we need it to turn down. And once it turns down, we're going to expect the euro to give us some downside pressure. Well, not only is the daily pointing up, but our weekly gave us a failed slingshot down. That is a strong sign, as we talked about the previous weeks. Once this disengaged and started pushing higher, that's a strong sign we would return back at least to the previous high. And we not only went back to the previous high, we shattered above that 110.86, confirming that we had much further upside once 110.86 was taken out. Now, how much higher will it go? Well, if this is part of that A, B, and C, we could go as high as that 117.12. But we should not go above it. And what if it's part of that B is already done and we have a 1, 2? Well, the 2 again could go as high as 117, but again, it should not break it. So this brings us back to our structure. Whether or not this is B complete or this wave B is still unfolding, the do not cross level is the same. We should not go up and until and break above 117.12. Well, if this is a triangle, A, B, C, D, E, and which would represent this wave B here is not complete, then of course we're not allowed to go above 117.12. Well, if this wave B is already complete and we're doing a 1, 2, then the likelihood of this should not also break 117. There are possibilities that it could break it, and it could be a 1 expanded flat correction 2, then we start coming down in 3, but that's very low probability. So I would definitely expect this 117.12 would not be breached, and at some point we are going to end up topping and reversing and heading down in our either D wave or our 3 wave. And again, the difference would be once this tops and reverses and we start heading lower, the 3 wave would allow for price to move all the way down and including breaking below 105.19. So that's where these two will diverge. I would not expect to break above 117. I would expect a top and reversal and down several hundred pips as we go down either for a D wave or a 3 wave. The difference would be the 3 wave is going to expect a new low, where the D wave is going to expect a higher low before rallying up to finish this move. Now, if it is the 3 wave and we break 105.19, great. We're still going to get a rally back up in a 4, which we would expect wherever this 3 ends, we would definitely go back into the area of wave 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the key is we should break the 105.19 first. So James, I won't be able to decipher which one of these is playing out until after price proves its intentions and moves all the way down and breaks 105.19. If 105.19 is breached to the downside, then we can no longer have an A, a B, a C going down in D. It must be the 1, 2, 3 scenario. Okay? But again, we're up here in the 112 handle, 113, getting close. And if we do end up coming down, we must break 105 in order to decipher it's the wave 3 down. Well, think about it. 113, say, we're getting so close to it. 113 down to 105. Wow, that's 800 pips. Well, Gary, could we get an 800 pip or more? Yeah, if it's wave 3. Well, what if it's wave D? Well, D should make a run towards the previous low over here, around that 107 range, but should not go as far as 105. So we're going to keep an eye on the D wave as it comes down, and perhaps we do make a run towards 107 and bounce towards back up for this E wave. But if we end up going all the way below 107 and 105, then it must be the 3. Well, what does that have to do with trading the euro? The key component is going to be to look for a major top in reversal and at least a several hundred pip rally back down. Or in this case, a trend reversal to the downside in excess of several hundred pips. At what point is this over? Well, so far we spiked to 12.98 and we pull back a little bit. Are we going to break 13? It's quite possible, right? We're back to 12.90 and we're going to continue higher. Well, that's the key, is watching the daily trend momentum in PAI. My weekly's still up, so you would expect further upside. My daily is still up, so you would expect further upside. At what point do we expect this is over and the downtrend reversal is starting? When at least minimum we see the PAI and the trend momentum crossing down on the daily. So Al, this could grind higher. I would be peeling off a little bit of profit, but I would still stay long because this is not showing signs of being over yet until when? We get first sign is going to be this daily PAI start to turn and hook down. And as this turns and hooks down and moves lower, we want to see it force the trend momentum to cross to the downside. So once we say we have a daily trend momentum in PAI down, that's when we want to start to call this top and reversal intact and a beginning of this down move, which should again be several hundreds of pips. First things first. Well, Gary, how do we know once the daily PAI turns, will the trend momentum cross? Well, once we start to see some downward direction, we need to see follow through, meaning that my 4-hour tops and rolls and starts to head lower. And once it starts to head lower, it engages up and fails. So we'd end up with a high, a low, a lower high. And as it fails, it turns and hooks out and makes a lower low. Notice over here, we did get a slingshot back up and it went right to the previous highs. It disengaged temporarily, but what happened? We did not get a lower low. So we didn't have a high, a low, a lower high, a lower low. We had a high, a low, double top basically, a higher low, and then it re-engaged. So the difference here is not only do I want to see the 4-hour come down, push lower, slingshot back up and give me a high, low, lower high, James, but as it fails and turns out you want to see price follow through by breaking a lower low. So we'd end up with what? Price pattern reversal, a high, a low, a lower high, a lower low. And we didn't get that here. And why didn't we get that here? Because the daily was not turning. Okay? Well, just because the 4-hour slingshot starts to fail is a sign and symptom that the daily is ready to retrace. But if we don't end up getting that lower low and we end up with a higher low and the daily still stays up, then you're going to expect the 4-hour to do this exact behavior. Well, it was turning down, now it's turning back up. But notice, the red and the blue turned down, but green money flow just flattened. So I am going to look for the euro to grind and grunt and grit its teeth in a laboring rise as we push a little higher up and until that daily decides, okay, I had enough of pushing higher, I'm ready to depressurize. Once it does, and we start to get this correction and movement down to the down area in this downward direction, we're going to expect not only the PAI to turn, but it follow through on that PAI turning down to the point where the trend momentum crosses to the downside. So one more time, Robert. Up and until we have the PAI and trend momentum, price action indicator and the trend momentum down, the euro is likely to keep grinding. And knowing that the euro can continue to grind, we still have a few hundred pips that it could go higher, right? We're at 112, 113. We still have about 400 pips plus that this baby can grind and still be okay. So that's why I don't think we're going to grind and break 117. But hey, up and until we see that reversal and we see the daily trend momentum in PAI crossing to the downside, we cannot expect this 2 or C to be complete until we do. Fair enough? So once the PAI on the daily turns and hooks, it follows through where the trend momentum crosses, then yes, I'm going to start to look for lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, as we move downward several hundred pips. And even if it turns out to be the D and we go back up in E, it's still going to allow for several hundred pip move down because that daily is due for a major depressurization. It's been in overbought territory for quite some time, and we haven't been oversold since our bottom reversal here, as we left the oversold territory was back in December. So well over a month, going on 2 months, that we've been in from oversold back toward overbought. And yes, we depressurized, but we were not able to go back to oversold territory. And if you'll remember, the job of the price action indicator and the job of the trend momentum is to move from one extreme to the other, to go from overbought territory back to oversold, to go from overbought territory on the trend momentum back toward oversold. And I suspect we're going to see that exact behavior, even if this ends up being my A, B, C going down in D. I'm looking for the daily to go from overbought and make a journey all the way down into oversold. And then, of course, perhaps we come all the way down and oversold. The daily bounces and turns back up to go back up in that E. If it ends up being my A, B, C, D, E scenario, it still would allow for the daily to move back toward oversold. So in closing on the euro, I will not expect this wave count up here to end, whether it's a 2 or a C, which doesn't matter, up and until I see the daily PAI turn and hook down, and not only turn and hook down, but follow through as it starts to move from overbought toward oversold and force the trend momentum to cross to the downside. That's the critical component. We want to see the PAI start to turn, yes, and we want to see it follow through day after day after day as it forces the trend momentum to cross. That's when we're going to look for a few hundred pip move at least toward the downside, in which it could turn out to be over 800 plus, because it ends up being that 1, 2 going down in 3. meaning we're going to break 105.19. Fair enough? So we'll talk about this once we start to say, hey, in upcoming classes, look, my daily turn is pushing lower. It kept going day after day after day, and my trend momentum is crossing. And the question is going to be at that point, once the daily trend momentum and PAI are down, how does it reflect on the weekly? Does the weekly turn and hook down too, or is it still staying up? Well, it's possible the daily could move down. We move down in that D wave, and then it flips right back up to the E wave while this just takes a little more time and finishes its move. But once either the A, B, C, D, E, that B wave is over, or the 1, 2 going down in 3, we're going to expect the what? The weekly must turn and join forces. All right, part of the cycling time frames is, well, once my workforce and foreman cycle down, is it going to be enough to pull the daily down, not only the daily PAI down, but the trend momentum? And then once that unfolds and we see the daily trend momentum and PAI headed down, is it going to be enough to force the weekly to turn? And these will be the signs and symptoms we're going to look for in the coming days, probably over the next week or so, as we then decipher, well, Gary, is it 2 going down in 3, or is it C going down in D? Everyone understands. So what was more likely, that if the weekly starts to turn and the daily trend momentum and PAI move from overbought all the way to oversold, and the weekly in fact PAI does turn and the trend momentum turn, then we're more likely to be the 3 wave, meaning we're going to make a new low. Well, what if the daily trend momentum and PAI turn and maybe the weekly PAI starts to turn, but the trend momentum doesn't cross? Then it's more likely going to be the D going back up an E. Okay, James? So I'm going to keep my eyes on this. Again, as I mentioned earlier, watch this level because we did rally, and that could be the end of the road here as this is completing, and we're in the early stages of a much larger retracement. But again, just because we rallied and we pulled back 30 pips so far, I'm not going to say I guarantee it's over because we're pulling back 30 plus pips, but we're due. We're due for a downward correction. Whether it's the D wave or the more robust 3 wave, we're due for a reversal. So what am I going to do? How do I confirm that it's over? A, we're going to confirm it via the daily PAI. And once the PAI turns down, we want to see it not only turn down, but force the trend momentum to cross down. And once I have both of those, once I can confirm and say, yes, we have a price action indicator on a daily, and we have the trend momentum on a daily in a downward direction, then now we're going to start selling the rallies in the downtrend. As for now, we're still buying the dips in the uptrend. And just because we pull back on this does not mean this is over. We could easily pull back and skyrocket one more time. That's going to be dependent upon this daily. So everyone know what signs and symptoms we're looking for. We're looking for the daily PAI to start to turn and hook. And as it moves from overbought toward oversold, we want to see it as like over here. We want to see it start to move down and continue to move down to the point where it forces the trend momentum to cross. And once we have the PAI and the trend momentum to cross, that's when we get robust movement down. Fair enough? Any questions? So even when we did this little slight turnover here, it still moved hundreds of pips. And then it went back up and it turned back to the downside. Not only the PAI turned back down, but the trend momentum crossed back down here. It still took several days to move lower, and it still moved 100 plus pips. It went from a high of 109.74 to a low of 107.76. Right? So still 200 pips there. So you see the point. Once we get the PAI and the trend momentum to cross, it's going to move at least a few hundred pips. James, how does that sound? And knowing we're in the midst of potential A, B, C going down in D, or perhaps that 1, 2 going down in 3, then those 200 pips should turn to maybe 400 or 600 pips. And if it ends up being the 3, then it could go above 800 pips as we break out 105. So that's what I mean by watch this closely as my PAI starts to turn and hook. Is it a follow through to the point where the trend momentum crosses? If the answer is no, well, maybe this just flattens out and the trend momentum stays up, then we're likely to see another little squirt higher. As we depressurize, the foreman and workforce moves from overbought territory back to oversold, and maybe we get another 4-hour slingshot back up, and we break another higher high, and we grind into the 113s. We could actually grind into 114 and even 115. No rule to say that we can't. The only rule we have up here is to say we can't break 117. So in closing, if you joined us late, we're expecting the euro is in the process of grinding higher, obviously, but we're looking for a top and reversal coming in the next day or so, maybe into next week, depending on what that daily PAI does and what the daily trend momentum does. But up until we get the daily PAI and trend momentum to cross and head downward, we're still going to expect this to grind higher. So that's why we have this general rule, a simple rule, as long as the daily trend momentum and PAI are up, we're going to expect further upside. And if we see just the PAI slightly flatten, but does not turn and hook, and certainly the trend momentum won't cross to the downside, then we're going to look for perhaps another little 4-hour slingshot to grind higher. So I will not expect a top and reversal until when? The daily trend momentum and PAI not only start to turn and hook down, but it crosses to the downside on that trend momentum. That's when we're going to expect the big move down. And even if it turns out it's only C going down into D, we're still going to expect several hundreds of pips. Okay, James? And again, the differentiation, where does it diverge? It's going to diverge that if price breaks 105, then I cannot be in a C, D going up in E. I must be in a 2 going down in 3. But certainly I can come close to that level, but not break it. And if we do see this stair-step lower 800 plus pips, and it breaks below 105, then you'll see the labeling clean up, and this is my B, and this is part of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as we head much lower. Bottom line, even as I stated, we didn't think it would break 110. The daily didn't turn. The daily should have turned, but it never turned, so therefore we rallied a few hundred more pips. Good. And if the daily doesn't turn again, can we go into 114 range? Sure. Or even 115? Sure. That's why I'm going to continue to watch for signs and symptoms of not only when the foreman starts to turn over, does the daily PAI turn, and is it enough to force the trend momentum to turn? And when we get both of those, hey, I now have a daily trend momentum and PAI down. We're going to call it quits for 2 or C here and know we're in the midst of a D down or a 3 down. Fair enough? And then, Gary, how will we differentiate once this is over and we're starting to go down into D or 3? Well, not only should the daily PAI and trend momentum move from overbought to oversold, but it should be enough to start to force the weekly to react. And if the weekly PAI starts to flatten and turn, but the trend momentum doesn't cross, then it's probably more likely the D down looking for a bounce back up in E, versus if it does, my daily trend momentum and PAI move from overbought to oversold, and the weekly does turn back down, then we're going to look for the 3 wave, meaning we're going to break below 105.19. Okay? But in the interim, we should have at least a few hundred pips to the downside easily. Few hundred pips to the downside. Pound dollar. Pound dollar appears, that was from last week, that we have a 3 and this 4 is done. I would love to see price confirm it by breaking below the low of yesterday of 143.50. As we start to break down, I have a couple of targets. Whether or not this 4 is done or it rallies one more time and a combination correction ends up over here to the right, I still have two targets toward the downside. The first target is at 140.36, and the second target is several hundred pips lower at 136.44. Why do you have such a big range? Well, it depends if this wave 4 is over, moving down in 5. Is it going to subdivide or not? And if it does, then we're going to look for the lower target. If it doesn't, then we'll look for the upper target. And again, these are just targets. Doesn't mean that it must come here in reverse or it must come to the second one in reverse. Well, what's the reverse going to be? If this is part of this 1, 2, 3, 4 going down in 5, then we're going to expect once 5 is over, whether it's here or here, anywhere in between, we're going to end up with our 3 here. Then we go up in a 4, then down in a 5, and we continue to move lower in the coming months. Both the euro and the pound long term, please don't lose sight of that, long term, we're going to expect both of those are going to go breaking lower lows, meaning the euro will break not only 105.19, but go on and break 104.61 and head towards parity. And the pound should go on and break the previous low here at 140, headed much lower, making a run towards 135. We're also going to require our good friend the dollar index. And yes, we're breaking down on the dollar index, part of a nice hearty retracement. It doesn't mean that this now is the end. It could squirt a little bit lower just like the euro. But at some point, we're going to expect this downtrend, as my daily is moving into oversold territory, will start to turn and hook up on the PAI and force the trend momentum to cross. And that's when you can expect the euro and the pound to start to move back to the downside in a very strong, methodical method. Any questions? So Gary, how does the dollar index affect the euro? How does it affect the pound? Once the dollar starts to strengthen again, we're going to expect not only the euro to reverse and start heading lower, but the pound, even though it looks like it's finishing its down move, it will increase its downward direction and strength and overall trend to the downside. So once we get this to finally finish, well, Gary, my weekly is engaged, disengaged, and we got a high, low, lower, high, lower, low. And yeah, we could see further downside on the weekly scale, but also last time we had a nice little down move, it engaged back up. So there's no rule to say that we can't engage, disengage, re-engage, and force the trend momentum not only to cross back up, but continue higher and higher and higher and higher for weeks and weeks and weeks. And we go on to break that 100 and start the process of much higher. My monthly turned and hooked out as well, just like the euro. Well, of course, when the weekly does start to turn back up, we're going to watch to see if it affects this monthly. And the monthly could do the same, where it engaged, disengaged, it moves down and it re-engages. We've seen that many times before, where it engage, disengage, re-engage, disengage, engage. So there's no rule to say that we can't get the daily to bottom reverse, move all the way in overbought territory, and then force the weekly to start turning back up. And when my daily and weekly are pushing back up, it forces the monthly to turn back up. And lo and behold, we not only stop this downward direction, but we start to robustly move back to the upside and break above 100 and start that process to 100 and above. Long term, remember, long term, meaning over the next few years, we're expecting the dollar index will break 100, not only break it to the upside, as we've done before, but confirm this area as support, and then start to grind over and up towards that 120 and perhaps even higher than that. So as I go back in time, remember, this has happened before, and yes, it took a long time to finally test, break it, test, break it, test, break it, test, break it, to then come back, nice big hearty pullback, to another push higher to finally confirm it and then pull lower, up, below. So James, what happened? It finally got tired of breaking up and then breaking back below. So it broke one more time, retested the support, and then never looked back for the next couple of years. Right? Just kept grinding higher and higher, pull back higher and higher, pull back higher and higher, pull back. So yes, we would expect this to take a few years to rally from 100 towards 120, but that is the longer term projected path. And even though we're in the midst of a hardy correction right now, that's fine. Because we had a huge, if you look at the spectrum here, we had a huge rally for months and months and months and months as we went from low down here in the 70s all the way to 100. And we had a little combination correction. And then we pulled and rallied and made another higher high, right? We got a high, a low, a higher high here. And yes, even though it's squared above, it is pulling back. That's okay. Well, a key area to watch, if this is going to continue higher, is going to be this previous swing point low here. And that's down at 92.52. 92.52. So please put that on your chart. 92.52 on the dollar index. And 92.52 should hold. Because if this is part of this breaking process, then we should get what? Highs, lows, higher highs, highs, in this case another higher low, another higher high. Part of that grinding and grunting as we finally break above 100 and confirm we're now at not only above 100, but confirm this red line is now green for support, and we expect the dollar index to continue to grind towards 120 before then breaking back below that 100 level. So Gary, could we go deeper? Sure. We're sitting here at 96. We could drop another 4 points down to 92. Are we going to do that? Maybe, maybe not. But that's why I'm going to watch for signs and symptoms. So Marty, another sign and symptom would be in order for the euro to top and reverse and start heading lower, we're going to need the dollar index to officially bottom and reverse and start heading higher. Well, we did get a little bit of a rally the other day. Woo! But it didn't last very long and it went back to another lower low. What happened? My PAI never really officially hooked to the upside. It flattened out, but never really officially turned upwards. And not only did it not turn upwards, it was not enough to force the trend momentum to cross. So when are we going to expect the euro dollar top and reverse and start heading down those several hundred pips? When the dollar index PAI turns and hooks up and it forces the trend momentum to cross. So in the coming days, Al, I guarantee we're going to be talking about the PAI and the trend momentum headed to the upside on the dollar index. And when we are, we're going to also be talking about the PAI and the trend momentum headed down on the euro as we start to top and reverse and head much lower, hundreds and hundreds of pips lower. We're going to expect this dollar index to move up several points. Okay? So once this little retracement is over and we're grinding up, we're going to expect it, whether it comes down to 95 or a little bit lower, we not expect it to break 92 down here, in which we should end up with a higher low. We're likely to probably see it not even go as far as 93.85. That was part of this initial low stair-stepping process, bounce and reverse, and that's really where it shot out like a cannon back above 100. We should expect that we should see price not break this zone down here. Right? This is some major support down here. From that 93.85 all the way down to 92.52. A little over a point, almost a point and a half. Well, Gary, at what point are we going to reverse? That still leaves the door ajar to go down a couple of points, right? From 96 down to 93, that leaves us at least 2+ points left to move lower. Is it possible? Yeah, because the euro could go from its 113 range towards 114, 115, even 116. But it should not go to 117 and above. Fair enough? So when do we know we got a confirmation that it's reversed? When I see the PAI on the dollar index turn to the upside and it maintains an upward stroke that it forces the trend momentum to cross. And at the same time, once I have the trend momentum and PAI up on the dollar index, we're going to see the PAI and the trend momentum down on the euro. Everybody good so far? Down on the euro. That's when we're going to expect the big move of several hundred pips down, no matter what. So again, you want to confirm the bottom reversal on the dollar index coinciding with the euro topping and reversing on the daily euro. That's when we're going to move down several hundreds of pips, if not over 800, depending on which one it is. And what's it going to look like on the dollar index? Well, if it does move down and break below 105.19 and head lower, then you can rest assured that when this rally continues, it's going to break 100 and go higher. Any questions so far? I'm expecting a higher low above 93.85. Absolutely should not break below 92.52, and likely it's not going to break either one of these. That we will reverse and go back up somewhere between now and this 93.85. Fair enough? And how do I know this is over? When we get this to turn up, follow through, and the trend momentum on the daily crosses, that's when we're going to expect a big move higher. And make a run, James, back towards 100. Which means the euro should make a run back towards this 105. At least 107. Part of this correction up here, at least 107 in my A, B, C, D area. Any questions on the euro and the dollar index? So how does that relate to the pound? Is the pound going to end and it's already tanking lower? Well, key component is to break below 43.50. Well, that still doesn't say this can't be an ABCW, down in X, up in Y. That's why I have a 4 over here as well. And if this is this impulsive move, 1, 2, 3, working on 4, then at no point should we go above 48.92. At no point should we go above 148.92. And as long as we honor that, we're going to expect this is part of my 3 ending and my 4 unfolding. And whether or not 4 is done yet or it's still unfolding, only time will tell. But a good sign of that continuing and this is being over is we break below 143.50. Then we need to go on and break the previous low of 140.78. And if once that occurs, we're going to target not too much lower than that, 140.36. We go blowing past that, we're going to start to focus on 136.44. So please put these on your chart. 140.36, target number 2, 136.44. I expect both of these will be met whether or not this 4 is over and we're headed lower, or this is going to be a combination correction and then head lower. I expect to see those come into play. Even if it turns out we get a 5 and it ends this wave 3, we go up in a 4, down in a 5. Before this C wave is done, way down here, I'm going to expect we should see price not only reach target 1 and 2, but likely to go at that 135 and below that. That will depend directly correlating to, does the dollar index not only reverse and go higher, but does it truly run towards that 120 and above? And I say I guarantee if the dollar index does reverse and not only break 100 but run up towards that 120 and above, then yes, the pound dollar is not only going to reach target 1 and 2, it's going to go blowing past those, and it's going to reach the previous low of 135, blowing past that, and who knows how low the pound can truly go. Maybe it goes to 120. All depends on how far the dollar index goes at 120 and above. So in closing, if you're short on the pound, I'm short on the pound, I'm staying short because I think there's a good chance this 4 is over. But just in case I see signs and symptoms of a reversal, I'll close the trade and then let it rally back up a few hundred pips as we look for this wave 4 to complete, knowing that this reversal is capped at 148.92. Well, how is this going to rally and go back up here? If that dollar index starts to continue to grind and push much, much, much lower, then the pound should give us another retracement back up. But up and until then, you could put a swing point high here up at 146.65. So I'm going to put a little thin red line. So you click it till you get to your little square box here. You put your cursor on the line. You hold your control key, left key, click, and drag. It makes a duplicate. So now I'm going to go in here and type that to 146.65, 46.65, I think it was a 3, whoops, 146.65, I'll double check that one more time, and then I'm going to make it a thinner line, knowing that yes, it should hold, but depends on what the dollar index does. And let me get that high one more time, 146.65.5, you want to do the 5th decimal place. 146.65.5. So I'll change that to a 5 here. And there we go. So Al, any rally back up should not break this high. If 4 is done, then we can't go any higher. Well, Gary, what happens if we break above? Then 4 is not done. That's pretty simple. Well, if this is done, we're not going to go back above 146.65. Right? 1.4665. If we do not go back above and we start breaking lower, then obviously 4 is done. Well, what if we don't and we don't break this previous low and we bounce and we go back above it? Then obviously that wave 4 is not done. But in order to do that, we would need, the weekly is still up, we would need this daily to fail and turn and hook out. So Andres, here's a trade alert for you. If we see this daily trend momentum in PAI that's starting to cross down, right? We're getting the cross and we have the PAI down. If we see this PAI turn and hook back up and we get the slingshot down and fails, turns and hooks out, then what are we going to do? We're going to close any short trade you're in, go back long, and expect wherever we are, we're going to rally back above that 146.65, make a run towards it and slightly above it, to finish that combination wave 4. So Gary, say that again. Well, what if we come down a little further and turn and hook out? Doesn't matter. If I end up with a low, a high, and a higher low over here, just like over here, when we had a higher low, it turned and hooked out, what happened? The pound rallied several hundred pips. Could it happen again? Yeah. And it's likely to happen if my weekly doesn't turn. Any questions? This weekly stays up, Al. I am expecting this daily to fail and turn and hook out. And when it does fail and turn and hook out, I'm going long, and I'm going to ride it up at least 200 pip range to make sure that I expect it to run back towards 146.65 and above. Well, what would that look like on the Ichimoku cloud here? It looks like running back towards the cloud over here. Reversal, turn and hook out, reversal, and stair-stepping its way into the cloud. That would bring us back toward the previous high and above. It could even slightly go above and toward the top of the cloud. And then a little ABCW XY. Wave 4 over, then down. That's why it's imperative we keep an eye on the dollar index. Is the dollar index reversing now, or is it going to go lower? If it continues to go lower, then it's likely the daily is going to disengage on the pound, and it's likely it is going to rally back towards that 146.65 range and above, because the dollar index is going to head lower, perhaps from this low of 96 down to 95, 94. Right? Very unlikely we're going to go busting down below this zone. But the question is, are we going to make it even anywhere near this area? That's why we're going to continue to watch the PAI and the trend momentum. And if they stay down, then what do? We continue to sell 4-hour slingshots. 4-hour slingshots, 4-hour slingshots. Well, Gary, what if my daily stays down, my 4-hour stays down? Then I can continue to sell 1-hour slingshots. Right? Maybe we get another 1-hour slingshot because the 4-hour doesn't have a chance to depressurize and it stays down. Well, if my 4-hour and 1-hour keep slingshotting lower and lower, then there's no way this daily is ready to reverse. So that's why it's imperative, James, before I start talking about I guarantee the euro's topped in reverse and it's heading down several hundreds of pips, and I guarantee that wave 4 blue is done on the pound, we need to see this dollar index turn. Trend momentum PAI up. Trend momentum PAI up. And believe me, if we see the daily trend momentum PAI up on the dollar index and it forces the weekly to turn up with it, whoo, then you bet you we're going to run back towards 100 and very likely to go smoking past that 100. Which would mean the euro is definitely topped in reverse and likely to go smoking past 105. And then the pound is definitely topped in reverse, and it's going to go smoking down to our 140/136 targets. So in closing, right now, signs and symptoms, James Brown, lead me to believe, because my weekly is still up, my daily's been engaging down, and it's moved down a couple hundred pips plus, but it has not forced the weekly to turn. It's not forced it to flatten out. It's not forced it to hook. So with the weekly still up, the likelihood is this daily should fail. So in closing, the daily starts to turn and hook out. You want to close any short trade you're in and go to the long side. And not only go to the long side, but look for price to go smoking back above, at least a run toward 146.65, and highly probable it's going to make a higher high as we rally back into the cloud and above the cloud. Any questions on that so far? And we understand exactly what we're looking for. As the time frame cycle from overbought to oversold, oversold, overbought, overbought to oversold, oversold, overbought, we look for signs and symptoms. And yes, my daily is moving towards overbought territory, and it did engage down, and my trend momentum has started to slightly cross. But the problem is, during this crossover, unless this continues to push day after day after day after day after day, and we move from overbought to oversold, forcing the trend momentum to stay crossing to the downside, moving from overbought to oversold, if that were to unfold, I would expect this will pull the weekly with it. If not, and my daily simply depressurizes, even if it depressurizes a little bit more, and the weekly says no, then you bet you're going to see this reverse and go back up here. Any questions? And up until the weekly changes, we're going to expect this daily will disengage. So your trade alert is to buy the pound dollar once the daily disengages and starts moving higher, and expect it to run back towards 146.65 and likely to run above that towards perhaps the top of the cloud around this 147, 147.30 area. All right? Can't go too much higher than that because, again, we have a do not cross level at 148.92 over there, but we shouldn't see it move too much further. But at least the run back to 46.65 and likely to make a run a few pips higher towards that 147, 147.30 area, which represents the top of the cloud. What are we waiting for first? Failure. And if that weekly stays poised and says, nope, not interested in turning over, then yes, we're going to expect this is going to fail. It's too early to call just yet because this daily is not turning and hooking out yet. And could even go down a little further before it does it. And it's too early to call. Why? Because my weekly is still up, clearly. PAI and the trend momentum starting to cross to the upside as well. So I got a weekly trend momentum and PAI up. But it's too early to call because the daily is just barely crossing. So yeah, if it moves from this overbought territory all the way to oversold, we go crashing down with price, then absolutely I'm going to expect the weekly will turn. But why is it too early to call? Because the daily is not even really getting started yet. So it would require this to stay pointing down. Red, blue, green continue to move lower, 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 day after day after day after day after day after day after day, forcing the trend momentum to continue lower, 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 day after day after day after day after day. Then yes, the weekly will cross. But if this is just simply a simple failed slingshot that disengages, then this is going to turn and continue higher. Then that weekly is telling us and foreshadowing that right now, saying, look, until I turn over daily, you're forced to engage, disengage, and continue higher. And based on that disengagement, I would expect price to rally at least back towards 46.65/47 range. So you have your targets to the upside. We just need the daily to disengage. And when that does unfold, as we expect it will, why do we expect that right now? Because the weekly's not participating. And even though the daily's had some nice few days of downward movement, a few hundred pips, my weekly has not flinched, right? My weekly has not flinched. Very important sign and symptom so far. Well, Gary, is it possible this could stay lower and this crosses and moves all the way down and the weekly does cross? Yeah, certainly. That's why I'm watching for failure. And if the weekly stays up, then this is expected to cross and turn up. And when it does, what do? We buy and go long, shooting for 146.65 and above, 147. S&P is breaking down again. Is it going to be enough to break the new low and head below this 1804? Well, long term, I say yes. No questions asked. I expect this to go much, much lower. I kind of relabeled this. I just moved it over for a little bit more clarity. If this is my 3-4 over and we're stair-stepping lower in 5, that should shoot us toward this target of 1730, 1647 to give us a 5-3 black, 4 black, 5 black, to ultimately end this wave 4 green, and then we would look for a return back to the bullish markets. And this is my bullish scenario of the S&P. But again, even the bullish scenario says this isn't over. This is not my low, my high, my higher low, and we're going up here. Technically speaking, we still need to go much lower before we can even think about that being the end of this wave 4 green. Okay? Everybody clear? So I expect further downside, Marty. I expect 1804 is just a matter of time before we go smoking below that. All we're going to do is get a small correction here and then another strong move down. So Gary, say that again. I'm expecting this little rally to be short-lived and a smoking strong move back down as we go blowing past 1804 and we start focusing on 1730, then 1647. And even under the bullish scenario, we still need another several stair steps, another push lower to finish this complex here, my 5-3, then another rally, another push lower to finish this scenario. Well, Gary, what if it's Elizabeth, I'm coming to join you, honey, and it's the early stages of a market crash? Then we're going to expect that this is more of this 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, and we're in the midst of a 3 of 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 3, and continue that on indefinitely as we have another little 1-2. Well, Gary, this little rally here, short-lived, where should it not go? It should not go above the swing point high of 1921. Okay? So we're sitting at 1850. We should not go above 1921 because if then, again, as part of my 1-2, 1-2, and another little 1-2 orange here, and we're in the midst of a 3 orange, of 3 green, of 3 magenta, of 3 blue, of 3 black, And once all these 3 of 3 of 3 of 3s finish playing out, that's only a 1. And we start to 2, 3, 4, 5 as we stair step much, much lower in my C or Y down here, meaning we're going to make a run down towards 665 and below. That is hundreds and hundreds of points lower. Well, this rally should be short-lived. Let's check it out on the software. And what are we looking for? Well, my daily is clearly still down. This is part of what I want to see the pound do. Not only stay engaging, force the trend momentum to cross, but force day after day after day the trend momentum to continue to push lower, 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 and lower. So during this little rally, my daily trend momentum and PAI are down. Marty, what are we going to look for? Selling a 4-hour slingshot. Selling a 4-hour slingshot. So part of this little correction, yeah, it's going to be a little small correction. Should not go back above what? My 1921. Should not go above 1921 because if this continues to subdivide 1, 2 black, wave 3 black down, 1, 2 blue, wave 3 blue down, 1, 2 magenta, wave 3 magenta down, 1, 2 green, wave 3 green down, and the latest 1, 2 orange, wave 3 orange down, then we cannot go above 1921. That's why I say right here, expect 1939.50 to hold, because I believe this wave 4 is over, or this wave 2 is over, and we're in the midst of moving lower in hour 3 or hour 5. Depends how you slice it. Is it going to be the more bullish scenario of the two, or the more Elizabeth, I'm coming to join you, honey? And they won't diverge for quite some time. So, Andres, look for this rally to be short-lived, going no higher than 1921, giving us another lower high, resulting in another lower low. And once we break this 1804, we believe, obviously, we're going to start focusing on 1730, 1647. And once we get a push down here, it still could be one of my 3s here going up in 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, 5, over and over. Or it could be this 3, 4 going down for the more bullish. But I suspect we're not going to see a bullish reversal of any type until we've met this target and then some. Any questions? Gary, the most bullish scenario of this, where 4 is over, we go up here in 5, making new highs again, would be what now? We must at least go to this target zone. And I've said that for months and months and months, and it's still unfolding accordingly. So again, this rally is simply just a selling opportunity. I expect this is going to reverse, and then we're going to have another down day, and we're going to end up breaking 1804, starting to set the tone as we work our way towards 1730, 1647. And I still won't know if it's this 1, 2, 3, 4 going down in 5 to 3, 4, 5 to end this, or it's more of this 1, 2 black, 1, 2 blue, 1, 2 magenta, 1, 2 green, 1, 2 orange, and lower low, lower low, lower low. Only time will tell which one it is, but we got a long way to go before we see any type of divergence. So looking at the software, the daily's still down, and when my daily stays down, my trend momentum PAI are down. Now, what are we expecting? Lower lows. Continue to move lower. During a small correction, what's unfolding? Well, I got a 1530 1 hour depressurizing. Good. We would love to see the 1 hour move back in overbought territory. We'd love to see the 4 hour continue to depressurize further. And when I get my 1530 1 hour all turning over, PAI trend momentum's turning over, and a 4 hours engaging, then we're going to expect that little rally is over, and we're back to another strong push lower, shooting for, as I go to the daily perspective, the daily trend momentum and PAI to stay down. And as long as that is unfolding and stays down, we're going to expect limited rally, stronger downside, aka breaking 1804, headed towards 1730, 1647. Rally, push lower. So all this is depressurization. My 4 hours should turn over and head back down, joining the daily down, joining the weekly down, right? Daily still down. And while my daily's down, my weekly turned over, back down. That's very bearish. And my monthly is down. So nothing about my big picture says we're going to do anything but break new lows. Any questions? My 1804 in this monthly, we got trend momentum PAI, angle and separation, and we're smoking to the downside. So we're going to expect lower lows. My weekly turned up and turned and hooked right back over as the trend momentums kept going lower. So as this turned up, trend momentum said no thank you, and boom, flip right back down. That's very bearish. My daily pushing from overbought toward oversold, starting the process pushing toward oversold, that's very bearish. So look for some chopping, overlapping sideways to maybe a little higher grunting, but eventually we're going to see it revert back to the daily, weekly, and monthly down, and we're going to go shooting down towards 1804 and below. And once we take out 1804, my focus will be on what now, Gary? Once we take out 1804, my focus will be on 1730, followed by 1647. And we'll reassess when we get down here to see, is this unfolding in this 4 going up, or is this still unfolding in the more bearish scenario? Any questions? So in closing on the S&P, keep an eye on the daily trend momentum and PAI. As long as they stay down, expect further downside. And that this little bounce, Andres, is simply just a small little correction before another strong push lower. That's the bias. Because again, not only is the daily trend momentum and PAI down, I have a weekly trend momentum and PAI down, and I have a monthly trend momentum and PAI down. So when you see all of those in unison, monthly, weekly, daily, that means we're going lower. Even with a little bit of a rally, we're still going lower. Black Gold, Texas Tea, the Beverly Hillbillies. Is this the end of 4? Are we doing some sort of triangle here? Or are we doing a combination and 4 is not over? What to what? What to what's it going to do? Bottom line is, once this correction is over, I'm expecting further downside. I don't see anything other than going toward 2610. This could be that, yes, this is the beginning of this down move. We're going to break this low, go on and break that low, and head towards 2610. And even at 2610, that doesn't mean it's the end of the road, as evidence over here. Is this 4, 5, 3, 4, 5? And we continue down in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as we continue much, much lower in the weeks and months to come. I definitely say this is not the bottom reversal here, that we will be going lower. And so far so good. There's a couple of options now that we've been grinding in a sideways fashion. It could be part of an A, B, C, D. Let a rally back up, E. Then it's over and we head down. Or it could be my ABC is already done. There's my 4 and we're starting to stair step lower in 5. Or perhaps we get a combination where we have an A and then this little A, B, C, D, E down here. And then that's my B. And then now we're working on our way up in C to go back towards 35. Well, look at the software. My daily is still down. Trend momentum and PAI are down. That does not bode well for this going higher as we speak. Right? And we're retesting the lows over here, but my daily trend momentum and PAI are down. My weekly trend momentum and PAI are down. Starting to cross back down. Trend momentum 2 is down, and my PAI is engaging down. My monthly is still down. So now you can understand why I don't think that this is a bottom reversal yet. I still say we're going to go towards 2610 and very likely to go below that. Fair enough? Monthly trend momentum in PAI down. Weekly trend momentum PAI down. Daily trend momentum PAI down. So what does that tell us? Black gold, Texas Tea, the Beverly Hillbillies is not finished towards the downside. Whether or not this turns into a combination correction, a triangle, doesn't matter, or it's already over, part of a 4, 1, 2, working our way down, subdividing. We're still going to expect further downside, breaking new lows and heading towards 2610. So 2610 should be in your view and focus. And it's somewhat of a good sign already that we've broke below this previous low here. That's a good sign. That maybe this is 4 over, we're working on 5 down, and we're in the midst of a 1, 2, and we're working our way down. And again, if my daily trend momentum PAI, weekly trend momentum PAI, monthly trend momentum PAI, all stay in that downward direction, no question we're not going up that way, we're going down this way. So what's my line of progression telling us right now? My daily still down, trend momentum PAI down, my weekly, monthly. So we want to look for an opportunity to sell the next 4-hour slingshot. So look for a little more sideways to perhaps upwards correction as the foreman and workforce depressurize back towards overbought territory. Fair enough. Depressurize back towards overbought territory. And as we move back towards overbought territory, we're going to look for some chopping, overlapping sideways to higher correction. And all we're waiting for is this 4-hour to form, engage, form, engage, form, engage. So we want to sell the next 4-hour slingshot. I'm going to move this over here. And I'm going to change that to the H4 slingshot. Sell H4 slingshot. Okay? So Andres, what should we see? A little chopping up and down. Chop, 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 chop. Sideways to perhaps a little higher while we're forming. And once we engage down, look for another push lower. And we have been showing lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, and I suspect that will continue. And now, as long as I got my daily trend momentum and PAI down, weekly and monthly, stating the same conclusion, no questions asked, we should see another lower high and another lower low, another lower high and another lower low. And how are we going to get there? Slingshot, slingshot, slingshot. Eventually, my daily is going to start to turn and reverse. Well, we should be at a new lower low by then. And yes, we did spike below this previous low here of 29.56. 29.56 to a low so far of 29.30. So we did breach it by, what is that, 26 cents? So that is a strong sign that we will see further downside, breaking that low. And it's a strong sign we're seeing what? Further downside because the daily, weekly, and monthly are down. And where does that leave us on the structure? Well, if this is an A, B, C, D, E, we shouldn't have gone below the B, so that's out of the question, since we got another push lower this morning. So no longer can this be a little wedge here, so that part's out. Well, what if this is part of my A, and this is my B coming down, and then we go higher? And see, that's still possible. So you see my B over here? I could still have a 3A coming down in B, and then go up in C in a combination style correction. That's still eligible. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this right here. That's no longer eligible. For those of you keeping score at home. All right, give me the little dot. There we go. And let's take you out. And then to the dot there and take you out. So everyone see what the deal is. This cannot be my A, B, C, D going up in E. because the D wave broke below the B wave by going down to now 29.30, breaking 29.56. So that's off the table. So what's left? Part of this little A, B, C coming down from my B, and I'll take that off. Make this a little more clear. So y'all can see how this happens, Al. You simply take one day at a time, rule out any potential corrections, and this is either going to be my 4 done going down in 5 or A coming down in B with the reversal back up. No longer is that my triangle headed this way with the 4 down. That's off the table because we broke below that low. And it still could be my A, B, C, B up in C here, and it still could be a combination correction. So what do I want to see? I want to see price continue lower, and as long as the daily, weekly, and monthly are down, I expect to see exactly that. And then once we take the low out, my next target is 26.10. At which point, we get down to 26.10 area, we should then get another correction, another push lower. So by no stretch of the imagination is this low the end of the road, or is 26.10 potentially the end of the road. We would expect further downside beyond 26.10. But we need to let this finish playing out. So bottom line is, I don't expect this to go what? Ranging way back up here, because part of my 1, 2 blue, 3 blue, 4 blue would not allow for that to go breaking above this 45.78. If this wave 4 is already done at this high of 34.79, then any rally back towards that area should give me a lower high and end up with a lower low. So I need to see a high, low, lower high, lower low. So far so good. Lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low as we head down to 26.10. That would mean this wave 4 is done. So again, up and until I see the daily turning, trend momentum and PAI, there's no reason to believe that this wave 4 is not done. Fair enough? My daily trend momentum PAI stay down, there's no reason to believe we're not going to continue to go lower, which means there's no reason to believe the 4 is not done. We're already headed down towards 26.10. We're starting to stair step our way down there. High, low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low as we head towards that next target. Gold. Gold kept going higher, and yes, it made its intentions known. It broke above 1191. So I cleaned up the chart. I'm going to put this on hiatus where we have the big down move up and until I start to see the weekly flip over. We'll restructure, but until then, I'll keep buying. My weekly's still up. My daily's still up. Keep buying, right? That weekly stays up smoking like it is. What are we going to do, James Brown? We're going to buy the next daily slingshot. Greg Tucson, keep going. My next target up on gold is, as price proves its intention, my next target is 12.12, followed by 12.27. And if this is part of the A over working our way up, this should be a long-term uptrend, should last from 1 to maybe even a couple of years. And during this phase, we could still have another big push lower. So, Gary, does that mean that we're not going to get another push lower? Sure we are. We're going to get a corrective phase back down, especially when we get to some of these higher degrees up here. Even when I'm way up here at a 1, we could get a 2 that comes all the way back down to the previous low. And if that 1, 2 down here ends up being expanded flat, we might even get another lower low here before it reverses. But until then, like we said over here, it shouldn't go up and break that 1191. It did so. And it went smoking past it, right? Not only went past it, went up to a high so far of 1200. Well, is this the end of the road and we're going to get this little correction? Or, and I suspect now with that, look at what we have. Whoops, let's do this one. Look at what we have here, Al. I'm going to pull this back down in perspective. This is part of subdividing 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, and I continue 1, 2, 1, 2, and a 3 of 3 of 3 of 3. And when all these 3 of 3 of 3s finish, we end up with a 1 and a 2 down, and then that would be a 3, 4, 5, and we get a 1 up here, or an A, and we go down in a B, or a big 1 maroon down in 2 maroon. Those can drop $100+ or more. Depending on where we are when this happens, we could still move down several $100 and may even make a new low. But we should not have gone above 1191. So I can't say that this is guaranteed without a shadow of a doubt, but up until we see things change, we're going to continue to buy the dips. And that is how it's going to change. My daily starting to depressurize, so your trade alert is to buy the next daily slingshot. As long as my weekly trend momentum and PAI are up, we're buying daily slingshots. And as long as my monthly trend momentum and PAI are up, we're buying daily slingshots. Got a big trigger down here going higher. My weekly has moved and continuing to move higher. That means my daily is expected to do what? Any slingshot lower on the daily should fail. It's done that, James. It's done it again. It then slingshotted higher. It slingshotted higher. And we're working on another one. Continue to buy your daily slingshots. Even though we wanted to see a reversal and a downtrend continuation, the signs and symptoms are not there. My weekly's still up. It didn't turn higher. And my weekly's been pushing so strongly to the upside, it's made the monthly turn. And now we have a monthly trend momentum and PAI higher. Well, we did rally nicely. Well, Gary, does that mean absolutely no questions asked, this downtrend has to be over? No, we still got highs, lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows. And yes, we're breaking this, but we still got a lot more of these to break in order to continue it. So Al, that's what I mean by when I show you different wave count. It does not mean that I simply follow the wave count and not pay attention to the cycles. Cycles are everything. And Greg Toussaint, even as this was rallying, said, I don't think it's going to break 1191. But in order for it not to break 1191, we need to see the daily turnover. Well, it kind of did that for us, right? Yeah, we're looking good. We're turning over, but what happened? As we started to turn over, it never followed through. The trend momentum never crossed. Major sign. Well, my PAI turned, but the trend momentum didn't. And what happens when the PAI turns and the trend momentum doesn't, and you look at a weekly smoking to the upside? You know the daily's going to turn and slingshot higher. Okay, so weekly trend momentum PAI up, monthly trend momentum PAI up. What does that mean? Gold's going higher. Andres? William Bruce?
Rick's in class. Rick?
Hey, Rick. Rick's in class. Good to see you, Rick. So trend momentum PAI up on a monthly means we're going higher. Trend momentum PAI up on a weekly means we're going higher. How much higher? Well, we're going to shoot for our next two targets. 1212, sorry. $1,112. 1212, $1,212. Let me say that correctly, not spell it out. I'll put it back here. Next target up is 1212, followed by 1227. If this is just subdividing 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, then we'd expect another push, a pullback, a push, a pullback, a push, a pullback, a push, as we grind higher and higher. What I'm interested to see in the coming weeks is once the daily not only starts to turn over, but the weekly turns over, how does that monthly react? So I've taken off the chart right now, my little 5A down over here at a lower low. For now. Up and until I see the weekly turn and flip over, right? Which could be weeks away. This thing could stay higher for weeks and we could be up in the 1400 range. Who knows? We're going to continue to buy the dips in the uptrend, and my strategy, as long as my weekly trend momentum in PAI up, my monthly trend momentum in PAI up, what am I going to do, Rick? I'm going to buy daily slingshots. Daily slingshots, daily slingshots, daily slingshots, over and 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 over. Well, the key is going to be once that weekly finally gets into overbought territory and turns over, right? Finally get the trend momentum in the PAI to turn, trend momentum PAI to turn, trend momentum PAI to turn, trend momentum PAI to turn. What does the monthly do about it? That's going to be an important development. So up and until then, I've rearranged the chart. I left the alt count on here. I'm putting that as the primary for now. And I'm leaving my primary count where 5A is going to complete further down on the back burner, because part of the subdividing wave count, we still could go higher and still could go lower, no questions asked. But while we're watching this, Rick, what do we know? You can't deny the fact that the monthly trend momentum in PAI are up, the weekly trend momentum in PAI up, and when we have both the monthly and the weekly trend momentums in PAI up, we know price is going higher. No ifs, no buts, no ands. Now it's a matter of the cycles. So your trade alert is to buy the daily slingshot once it engages up. We need some depressurization as the 4 hour starts to depressurize. My 15, 30, 1 hour start to depressurize and move lower. We should see a lot of this chopping, overlapping sideways to perhaps a little lower during the correction, allowing the workforce 15, 30, 1 hour to depressurize back towards oversold, to give the foreman 4 hour an opportunity to start to depressurize toward oversold. And that would mean great. I would love to see that so my daily could depressurize and form a beautiful slingshot. So right now it's difficult to say exactly, is this my 3, 4 going down, or is this my 3 green already here and we're working on a 4 down? But I'm going to look for some chopping, overlapping sideways, chop, 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 sideways to lower during the cycle of the lower time frames. And my motto, based on the monthly, weekly, and daily higher, monthly and weekly higher, is to buy the daily slingshot in the coming days. Fair enough? And when we do slingshot higher, what are we shooting for? 12.12. And we should get another correction, another push higher, 12.27. Another correction, another push higher. So as we achieve these next two targets, 12.12 and 12.27, I'm going to give you targets further to the upside. And we'll continue to expect further grinding and chopping and moving higher and higher and higher, slingshot, 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 as long as that monthly and weekly stay up. So again, I want to give you a picture longer term. Longer term, what does that mean? Is that truly the bottom reversal when yellow gold has made its day and we're not going to go below 1,000? I still say we're going to go below 1,000, but if this is my A going up in B, it might be several years from now. But I still say before it's over, we're going to break below 1,000. I do not see us going back above 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, as this is the end of the road. Came close to 1,000 though. What was my low? 1,047? $47 shot. That's not too bad. What about this one? Okay, went a little bit lower. 1,046. 1,046.21. Well, Rick, you don't fight against the trend momentum in the PAI. You trade with it. So when I'm watching a weekly trend momentum PAI smoking to the upside, it's been smoking to the upside to the point where now my monthly is crossed to the upside, trend momentum PAI up, then we're going higher. And notice where the purple line is, 12.19. So it's kind of right in the middle of my 12.12, 12.27 target. No questions asked, we're going up there. We're not going to reverse and go blowing down any lows yet, because my weekly trend momentum and PAI are straight up and my monthly trend momentum and PAI are up. So that means we're going higher. And yes, I expect to see 12.12 and 12.27 reached, and more than likely much higher than that. When am I going to become interested in much further downside is once the weekly turns, trend momentum PAI turn, which weeks from now you'll have it. It's definitely going to occur sooner or later. So once we get the weekly trend momentum and PAI starting to move down, we should get strong signs and symptoms whether or not it's going to affect the monthly. And if I see the weekly turnover, Rick, and the monthly says, not going to happen, people, I am going to move from oversold toward overbought. I'm going to move from this oversold territory all the way up towards overbought. And I don't care, weekly, that you go down and depressurize, because if I don't turn with you, what's going to happen? My weekly is going to start to slingshot back up. Okay? So where does that leave us on GGN, GDX? GDX and GGN have made a little climb, but it's not the end of the road. Don't chase the up move, because we want to see that pullback. And we're going to expect at one point when we get that weekly to turn over, we might have a low here, we have a high, we end up with a higher low, and prices way back down here near that 1,046. And we end up with a low, a high, and a higher low. All depends on the weekly. Fair enough? So I want to see the weekly turn over. And I'm going to use this to buy my GGN and my GDX, etc. When I see the weekly turn over and we start to stair step much lower, and I see signs of the weekly moving down, and my monthly the whole time going, not going to happen, people. I am not going to turn over and engage down. Then when the weekly does what? Depressurizes and starts to engage back up, that's when I'm going to buy those gold stocks. Well, Gary, what about now? Yeah, we could see a little bit more rally. It rallied a few dollars on GDX. We'll show you that in a minute. And it could go a little bit higher, but I don't think that's the end of the road, because we are going to get a pullback. And GDX is not just going to go straight up, nor is gold just going to go straight up. We're going to get that pullback. And when we do, we'll look for those signs and symptoms. Fair enough? We had a sign and symptom early that we had a low, a high, and a higher low right there on this weekly slingshot. That meant the monthly was ready to retrace. But it still doesn't stay just because of that when the weekly trend momentum and PAI move from overbought back to oversold, that my monthly won't follow. And we could have a nice big robust move, and then we go smoking back down and making new lows. So that's why I want to have confirmation of the signs and symptoms before I expect to buy GDX and hold it for years, or GGN and hold it for years. As we expect the bottom reversal is truly there, we'll see signs and symptoms of that. Early signs so far, but the question is, what happens when the weekly changes? Everybody clear on that, right, Andres? What happens in the coming days / weeks when my weekly is now headed lower, headed lower, headed lower? What does the monthly do about it? Does it turn back over as it's done so many other times? We've seen this phenomenon before. Woo, gold is smoking to the upside. And it ended up making lower lows. Smoking to the upside, lower lows. Smoking to the upside, lower lows. Is this the end? Well, it went high enough it started to break some of these do not cross levels, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. We still need a lot more confirmation before we say we're not coming down here. But it's enough to warrant right now, Al, you don't go against a daily trend momentum PAI that was up all these days, knowing it should slingshot higher. Why? And all of these slingshots lower should fail and then slingshot higher and higher. Why? Because the weekly trend momentum and PAI have been up and did not turn and flinch. Red, green, blue, everybody. Red kind of flattened, but we stepped going higher. We never turned and hooked. We never not only turned and hooked, we didn't even attempt to start to cross the trend momentum down. So we have not had our weekly flip. That's what I'm going to be watching for. And what if it is this, William Bruce? Well, then my weekly is going to come down. We're going to see price go down significantly. And we're going to see the weekly turn into a big, massive slingshot higher as the monthly goes, I am in control, people. Step aside. I'm in control. Because not only am I crossing back to the upside, but this time I'm going all the way back to overbought. And this time you're going to go all the way back to overbought. And another huge sign would be what? My monthly slingshot's down and fails. And I have a monthly slingshot down and fails. That's a strong sign that, yes, perhaps this bottom reversal is intact, and we get a low, a high, a higher low, monthly fails, turns and hooks out. We haven't seen that in a long time. Fair enough? So in closing, motto is to continue to buy the dips in the uptrend. Price has proved itself. We broke above a do not cross level. We cannot have more of this 1 2 1 2 1 2 scenario because we broke the previous high over here. So we're going to follow the momentum of my monthly trend momentum and PAI up, my weekly trend momentum and PAI up, and what are we going to do? We're going to buy daily slingshots. And as we buy daily slingshots, what are we going to do? We're going to shoot for 12.12 followed by 12.27. Any questions? And what should we look for? Little chopping, overlapping sideways to maybe a little bit lower. And then we're going to look for a strong reversal back, continuation of the uptrend as we go toward 12.12, then 12.27. And it should be part of this 345, 345, 345, 345, 1, 2. So this is what I mean. Even as we subdivide on these lower wave counts, when we get to the larger ones and we end up with a 1 here, we should get a nice hardy retracement down in 2. And the key of that is going to be what? If this is the beginning of the end and we're going way up here, soaring back to 14, 15, 1600 range, hundreds of more dollars, then Rick, James, John, we're going to see signs of that on this weekly. And when my weekly turns over, my monthly is going to say, get out of town, not going to happen, and we're going to look to buy that weekly slingshot. And if I see that, hint, 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 if I see the weekly turn over, we start moving lower, and the monthly says no, when the weekly turnover either engages back up or it's engaging and turns and hooks back up, I'm going to then buy my GGN and go long, and I'm going to buy my GDX and any other gold play we want to look at. Speaking of GDX, GDX has done a nice job up here, right? Smoking higher. Well, it was down at $12 and now it's around $17. $5 move. That's pretty good on a $12 stock. Not too shabby. Or in this case, ETF or whatever one you look at. So as long as this is over, I don't think this is just going to continue to go straight up. Yeah, let me turn this off, auto scroll off, go to a higher time frame. We have much further upside availability on GDX, right? Look at it. It's too early to call this little bit of a rally here to say that this is the end of the road and we're going way up here. Once gold reverses and does its job, yeah, I expect it to make a run back at these highs. As gold is going to run hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars higher, and when that happens, GDX is going to go to the 20s, the 30s, 40s, start to rally much higher. But we still need, even on this chart right here, and I will turn my auto scroll back on and bring this back. So we still need what? Well, my weekly trend momentum and PAI are up. Yeah, obviously. My monthly trend momentum and PAI are up. It matches gold perfectly. So when are we going to become interested in this? Does the monthly turn and engage back down as it's done so many other times when the weekly turns? Or is it going to say no? And if the answer is no on GDX, for example, and my weekly turns over and I got a weekly trend momentum PAI down, And we're looking at that during those couple of weeks of price moving sideways to lower and dropping down from 17 to 15 to 14 to 13, etc. Maybe it comes down to this zone, and we see the weekly pushing lower, and my monthly the whole time says, nope, not going to happen. Then when I see this weekly depressurize, turn, and then slingshot back up, that's when I'm going to buy and look for another big push. So whether it's a $3 retracement and it reverses and engages, I'm going to buy and look for this to go much higher. So I tie that in with gold, the same scenario, so everyone clear. When the weekly turns, Rick, trend momentum and PAI turns on the weekly, we're going to see GDX, we're going to see gold move sideways to lower, no questions asked. And it's all going to be whether or not it's enough to force the monthly back over and we come down to new lows. That's why I didn't buy this yet. Yeah, I could have scalped that, but I don't think this is the end of the road yet. And even if it is, we're going to get another big pullback first to confirm it, as my monthly will then exert itself. And as it asserts itself and it moves from oversold toward overbought, this baby is going to climb dramatically in the months and months and months and months in the next year plus to come. If not, and this is just part of another one of these little corrections, and down we go, a correction, down we go, correction, down we go, correction, down we go, correction, down we go, then we're going to see the monthly turn over as the weekly then moves from overbought all the way to oversold, and the monthly forces its way back down. So that's why it's still too early to call, even though early signs, and yes, it rallied a few dollars here, to say that it's beginning stages of this. We're still going to get a big pullback down here. Price always moves in stair-step fashion. So in closing on gold and GDX and GGN, etc., etc. Is this the bottom reversal we're looking for to buy and hold for the next year plus, couple of years, 2-3 years? Or is this just another one of these get your hopes up and then it ends up with another lower low? Signs will tell us in the coming weeks. Once my weekly turns over, I'm going to watch how the monthly reacts. And if the monthly says yes and bends and flips back down, then good. I'd love to see GDX not only break the 12 low over here, but run towards $10. That would be fantastic. And if gold breaks and goes down below 1,000 and below as originally projected, then yes, I expect GDX to go down around that $10 range. We've seen this phenomenon before. We had a low over here at 40.38, went to a high of 55. It moved a good 15 plus dollars, right? But even though that big move, it still turned right back over and kept going lower. As my time trade would cycle, the monthly gave in. Cycle, gave in, cycle, gave in, cycled, to be determined. So one more time, I'm going to watch for this to continue to go higher for now. So we could rally even up toward the top of the cloud now on this weekly. As we climb higher, because my daily trend momentum, weekly trend momentum, PAI, right? Monthly trend momentum, PAI is up. Weekly trend momentum, PAI is up. So I'm going to watch the daily as it depressurizes. So I'm going to expect this to do what? Similar to gold. Chop up and down, sideways to lower. And if my daily says, okay, I'm depressurizing, and my weekly says, go, I'm not changing, then buy the daily slingshot for a short-term scalp. Where's the next target? Up here about 1955 as we climb toward this area. About $19, so another $1, $2 range roughly. Well, Gary, how am I going to get there? I'm going to have my daily depressurize and slingshot up. So until then, what should I look for? Chop, 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 chop. Sideways to lower, sideways to lower. And as my daily starts to depressurize, my weekly either is or is not going to turn. Right out? It either is going to turn or it's not going to turn. It is going to turn or it's not going to turn. It is going to turn or it's not going to turn. If the answer is not, then buy the daily slingshot and look for this to climb up another $1, maybe $2 range. Shooting for that 19 range. Okay? And again, once my daily then turns over the next time, if the weekly stays up, we continue to buy daily slingshots higher and higher and higher. But what really becomes of interest is once the weekly does finally turn over, trend momentum and PAI, that's when it's going to get interesting to see if the weekly is enough to force the monthly to engage down. Then all of this rally is going to be gobbled back up in a strong downtrend. Or is the weekly trend momentum and PAI going to head down and the monthly laugh at it and go, not today, not this week, and not this month. I'm moving. It's my turn to come from oversold territory to go to overbought. Then we're going to look to buy the weekly slingshot in the coming weeks. And when we do, that's when we're going to buy and hold this for quite some time, as I expect the weekly will slingshot higher and higher, and the monthly will continue its journey higher, 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 month after month after month after month. But up until my weekly and monthly stay up, we expect price to go higher. And how are we going to get there? Buying the daily slingshots. Okay? How's that for an explanation of GDX and, of course, gold? So target 1212, 1227. Let's go over here back to GDX. What's my target? As I go back to GDX, we have a target sitting over here previously as we're getting closer. We rallied above it. We broke that. So that's the next target up would be, let me go to my weekly. We're looking for another as we're testing this area. Again, would be towards the top of the cloud. And my previous swing point low over here is 1877. So that really puts a strong target up here around that $19 range. All right? Puts a strong target right around that $19 range. A former battle zone, former support, turn resistance, turn support, turn resistance. So this should be an area of interest as we rally towards that 18 range, and we look for 19 coming toward the top of the cloud range. Okay? Any questions there? Slingshot, higher, making a run towards the top of the cloud in that $19 range. I'll move that a little higher. Make that towards that $19 range right there. So where we are now, weekly, monthly up, daily depressurized, slingshot towards that 19. Any questions? And what happens when we break that? When we start to break above and above the cloud over here, we're going to start to shoot for swing point highs over here at 21. Then the swing point high over here at 23. And notice the 21 fits in beautifully with that bottom reversal there, top and reversal here. So we got 19. We have 21. We'll shoot for $2 increments. 19, 21. See how beautifully that works? And then 23. Up there. Well, Gary, can we tap all of these? Yeah, if we go to 1212, 1227, we continue to grind, slingshot higher and higher. That's exactly what GDX is going to do. 19, 21, 23. And again, once up and until I see what? The weekly turn, will we know whether this is truly the reversal here and we're going to be in a several year uptrend, or is this the beginning of another little rally before another push lower? But we can play it up and until then. Any questions on that so far? Russell 2000. Andres, just like the S&P, the Russell is going to continue lower. We bounced off the cloud once, rallied, now we're starting to grind back through the cloud. I suspect we're going to go on and take the bottom of the cloud out, sitting down here about 1885. We're going to chew through this cloud and we're going to head lower. Why? Monthly trend momentum PAI down. Weekly trend momentum PAI down. And notice how the weekly reacted to the monthly. The monthly was down, the weekly tried to go up, said nope, and flipped right back over. That's extremely bearish. Look for this to go towards 1885. So put that on your chart, 1885. And I'm going to turn it to green because I expect it to bounce off of that area, as it is the bottom of the cloud on that previous time frame. And parameter 885. Right off the bottom of the scale. All right? So how are we going to get there? Stair step, stair step, stair step. And my weekly gave in to the monthly, right? My monthly said, nope, trend momentum PAI down. Weekly PAI says, no, I'm going to try to get a little bit of a bounce here. What did we say this bounce should do? Should fail and end up with a lower low. We're working on that. Flip back over. So again, just like the S&P, we have a weekly trend momentum PAI, a monthly trend momentum PAI down, monthly down, weekly down. So what are we going to do? We're going to sell daily slingshots over and 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 over. And how are we going to get to 885? I keep saying 18. 885. How are we going to drop another 80 points? 75 to 80 points. We're going to stair step our way down there, and we're going to continue to look for opportunities to sell daily slingshots. Well, Gary, what if this takes several more days to not only start to turn and hook up, but to form and then engage? Well, as long as I have a weekly, we'll start with the monthly trend momentum PAI down. Rick, we got a weekly trend momentum PAI down. We got a daily trend momentum PAI down. We can sell 4-hour slingshots. Notice right there, went right to the line, slingshotted down, and it made several points. From 974 to 953. Andres, can you make any money on 20-point move on the Russell? Can you make money on a 20-point move on the Russell? You betcha. So what are we looking for? We're looking for another opportunity for the daily to start to either depressurize. So can I scalp to the upside? Yeah, when my daily turns and hooks up. See this daily down? It will eventually turn and hook up. We want that, right? We want it to engage and then disengage to form the next one. We want it to engage and then eventually disengage. So during the disengage, where can it go? It should make another rally up, and I can scalp that to the upside. Once that turns and hooks up, I'm going to watch how it turns and hooks up, and can I scalp that upwards? Yes. And when it does start to go towards the upside, will it affect the weekly to join, or is the weekly going to stay down? And if the weekly says, okay, daily, I want you to depressurize, but we're not going to turn, we're going to stay down, then that's in the coming days. I want to sell the daily in the coming days. I would not be surprised to see this daily end up with another down day. So even if we get another down day, Andres, like today, continue to grind our way down and this continue. Even if it obviously makes another lower low and we continue down today and make a lower low, that's okay. When it turns and hooks up, you can scalp that. Whether or not that daily slingshot makes a lower low or not, you can scalp it. When the PAI down turns and hooks up, you can scalp that to the upside. No questions asked. But I would be looking for the daily to then depressurize to slingshot lower in the coming weeks. And my weekly trend momentum and PAI stays down, my monthly stays down, then my daily will continue to slingshot, slingshot, slingshot. And in closing, can I scalp this when the daily turns and hooks up? Yep. I would look for a sideways, chopping, overlapping, sideways to upwards move for another correction to push lower, another correction to push lower, another correction to push lower, and I would look for continued lower highs and lower lows. Got a lower high, lower low, lower high, even when the daily turns and hooks out. I'm looking for a lower high to another lower low. And how are we going to get to 885? stair step, stair step, stair step, and daily should slingshot lower and lower in the coming months and weeks. And the weekly may even do it again. It's done it once. Who's to say it won't slingshot lower for months to come? Well, if this ends up being Elizabeth, I'm coming to join you, honey, then go out to your monthly view, and we're just getting started. Not only are we going to chew through the cloud and make a run at the bottom of the cloud, but we're going to go much lower. We're going to come down here and look for these lows, and come down over here and look for those lows. And how will we get there? The same way we got way up here by the monthly slingshotting higher and higher, the monthly is going to bottom reverse and start slingshotting lower and lower and lower. That's how we would get to 885 and continue down, 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 making a run over here at the previous low at 369. Well, Gary, that's 600 points. Yeah. If it's the big one, I'm coming to join you. That's exactly where we're headed, and we'll see signs and symptoms of that. So in closing, I would expect today, before it's over with, a little chopping, overlapping, sideways maneuver, but limited upside. And if my daily doesn't turn and hook up today, then we're going to look for another push lower. Right? Another lower low, another down day. Eventually, once the daily does turn and hook up, look to scalp that up, because it's going to move about 10, 20, 30 points and end up with another high, low, lower, high, lower, low, lower, high, lower, low, as it stair steps its way down in the direction of the weekly trend momentum in PAI, in the direction of the monthly trend momentum in PAI, and eventually we're going to need the daily to turn and hook up so that it can do what? Form another slingshot. Everybody with me? Form another slingshot. But we probably won't get it today, and it's probably going to take into the latter part of this week, if not next week, for the daily to finally bottom, turn, hook up, depressurize, then re-engage. But I would not be surprised to see a down day today, because my daily, weekly, and monthly trend momentum and PAIs are down. It's going to force the 4 hour to continue to slingshot lower, depressurize, slingshot lower again. And we have been getting lower lows, and we came, what is this, a double bottom? Did we get a lower low or right at it? 952.8 to 953. Well, 0.2 of a point. Gauge, disengage, re-engage. Okay? But I expect that the day will give us and ultimately end in a lower low. All right. What else? Anything else you want to look at before we call it a day? Bond prices have been soaring. And they have been soaring and soaring, and we're making a run at the previous high. Beautiful. Well, the damper is, and why bond prices rallying? Because the Feds are kind of stuck right now. They raised interest rates and the market didn't like it. The market's starting to pull back and show crashing, and the numbers aren't showing, and the economy's not growing. So the Feds are stuck by not raising interest rates. As they start to consistently raise interest rates, the bond prices will flip and start to head back down. But since they're not, they raised it once, it took a little shimmy, and it said, okay, what you going to do? And then they said such a bearish tone. Well, we did raise it this time, and we do plan to raise in the future, but we're waiting on data. Watch what happens when the data comes and it starts to show reason for them to raise interest rate. This baby's going to start to plummet. And right now, no surprise that it's rallied back up here, because the monthly is engaging. My weekly did what? Started to depressurize, move lower, and it turned back up, forcing the monthly to engage. And day after day, week after week, it's been climbing back toward the previous high. And so far, the high was 65.80, and so far, the high is 67.24. We did get a new higher high. Congratulations. Is it over? Well, no, it's not over. My monthly is still up. Trend momentum and PAI are still up. My weekly is still up. Yes, overbought, but still up. So what's the strategy? Continue to buy daily slingshots. Daily, daily, daily. In the interim, we're going to see a little sideways to lower retracement. My 15, 30, 1 hour, 4 hour are going to depressurize. And as long as that depressurization takes place and the weekly goes, nope, not happening, people. I am not turning and hooking. I'm staying up. I'm staying up. Then your trade alert is to buy the next daily slingshot on the 30-year bond. Well, where are we headed next? We haven't seen the likelihood of this highs over here. As far as on the chart I'm able to run here, well, we can start to use Fibonacci extensions off of this. So 67 previous high, what's the next high? Roundabout numbers, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71. That's always good numbers to shoot for. And then you can run that Fibonacci extension off of this retracement and run 127, 138, 150, 161, etc. Run extensions off of this. Well, Gary, how much higher can this go? It can go much, much higher, especially if the Feds continue to say, nope, we're not going to raise interest rates. The economy's not going to do it. We're going to leave it as is. Then, yeah, this is going to continue to go higher. Any questions on the 30-year bond? Strategy is, again, line of progression. Monthly, weekly up, trend momentum PAI, monthly, slingshotting, trend momentum PAI up, weekly, trend momentum PAI up. So that means we do what? We buy daily slingshots over and over and over and over and over and over and over. So in the interim, what am I expecting 30-year bond to do? Chop up and down, sideways to lower, while my foreman and workforce depressurize. And once they depressurize and give us another buy cycle, I'm going to expect the daily will turn back up. Whether or not we get a big slingshot or a small one or one in between, I'm looking to buy the daily when the foreman and workforce gets to oversold territory and give us a buy cycle. In the interim, look for some more chopping up and down, sideways to lower maneuver. All right. And John Younghusband, let's take a quick look at the euro pound. Euro pound ended up breaking new highs. No big surprise there. Why? The daily not only started to re-engage, it went down the purple line and then re-engage, but it's forcing the weekly to turn. That is a strong sign we're going to go breaking new highs. What did we say during the short trade? Well, it should continue to go lower as long as the daily's turning over and mushing lower and my weekly stays turning out. Well, what happened? Well, the weekly was turning out, but not enough to make the trend momentum cross. My daily did flip and turn down, yeah, it engaged and disengaged and rallied toward the purple line as expected. We expected it to be likely to break that if my daily kept going lower, but what happened? It didn't do that. It engaged back up, trend momentum crossed back up, so the last several days we've had the daily trend momentum and PAI up. That's when we continue to expect to move higher. And not only do we expect to continue to move higher, but it forced the weekly to turn. And as my weekly trend momentum and PAI are up, it's forcing the monthly to continue to push higher. So yeah, we're going higher. Correction, higher. So what was the term we said the other day? We expected to see short term, medium term, long term was definitely higher because of the monthly. Everybody see that? And still, is this the end of the road and we're going to reverse and go down? No. As long as my monthly trend momentum and PAI are up, Rick, euro pound is going higher. No ifs, buts, or ands. And as long as my monthly stays up, my weekly should be forced to turn and go higher, turn and go higher, turn and go higher. Slingshot, slingshot, slingshot. So in the coming days, as I watch my daily start to depressurize again, we'll look for a little sideways to lower correction, yes. But stair-stepping highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs. And what's the next target up? We reached a high so far of 78.94. That's basically this battle zone over here to the left. So the next one is based on this battle zone here and that high. So we want to shoot for the 80 range. Well, can it go another 200 pips? Yeah, it can. How's it going to get there? As long as my monthly trend momentum and PAI are up, my weekly trend momentum and PAI are up, I'm going to buy daily slingshots over and over and over and over. So we can scalp during corrections, and we can look for the reversal to end back in the direction of the higher time frames. So everyone clearly see the cycling time frames equals trading opportunities. And as they cycle, they give us signs and symptoms. And yes, my weekly started to turn and hook out, so we knew we would due for a correction. Yeah. And it was a matter of, was the daily able to go from overbought all the way to oversold? Or was it simply going to engage, disengage, re-engage? What was the weekly going to do? Well, the weekly did start to turn, so we knew we were due for a little downside correction. But how long and how deep would it go was based on what? The daily depressurizing. And was the weekly enough to turn and cross over? No. It turned, yes, didn't cross, and it did what? Right back up via a daily slingshot. So buy the dips in the uptrend now, John. Shoot for 80. That's in the target above. And how are we going to get there? Immediately now, look for a little chopping up and down sideways to lower correction. That is my workforce depressurizing, right? 15, 30, 1 hour, all depressurizing, allowing the 4 hour to depressurize. So I'm going to check out the daily. If the daily stays flat to up, I'm going to buy the next 4 hour slingshot in the coming hours. And if not, and the 4 hour tends to make a bigger retracement, that's good too. Love to see some chopping up and down sideways to lower, to allow the daily even to disengage, another retracement, to then buy the next slingshot. So in closing, on the euro pound, it's simple. When I have a monthly trend momentum and PAI up, I have a weekly trend momentum and PAI up, we continue to buy daily and 4 hour slingshots. And while my daily is engaging and waiting for the next turnover and slingshot higher, I can, while the daily's waiting to depressurize to form that next slingshot, I can buy 4 hour slingshots. So euro pound trading strategy is to buy 4 hour and daily slingshots until otherwise noticed or noted, and that is up and until the daily starts to depressurize. We're going to do that, and then of course the weekly. When the weekly starts to turn and hook back down, we'll get another correction and another surge higher. And as long as my monthly stays up, then we're going to expect this baby to climb much, much higher, including 80, and maybe even running toward the bottom of the cloud around 83. We can maybe run into the cloud and above. Thousands of pips higher this thing could truly go. All depends on the cycles. What happens when the weekly turns over? Is the monthly still up? The weekly will turn and engage up. What happens when the weekly turns and the monthly still up? The weekly goes up. So could it do it again and again and again? And we go to 80, 83? Sure. That's why it's imperative, as my time frames start to cycle, we look for those signs and symptoms. Does the weekly turn and hook out? Great. When it does, is it enough to force the crossover? Okay, yes or no. And if so, even if it crosses over and starts to turn down, yes, look for a deeper retracement. But if it doesn't make this monthly flinch, then we know the weekly is going to be forced to slingshot. Same holds true with the daily. When my daily turns over and depressurizes, if the weekly turns and does not cross to the downside on trend momentum and PAI, then it's going to force the weekly to go back up with it. And sure enough, that's what the daily did here. Right? Signs and symptoms. So good day, good luck, God bless you. May the pips be with you. I'm humbled and honored to be your mentor and instructor. Please take one trade at a time, one cycle at a time. Don't worry long term, I must know exactly where price is going in order to be successful. No. I just need the alignment of my lower time frames in order, my foreman and workforce, to get in a buy or sell. But once we're in that buy and sell, we need to look to the daily, weekly, and monthly to know whether or not this is going to be robustly for weeks and weeks or even months. Or is this simply a small short-term correction before another trend reversal? And in the case of the euro pound, we clearly see, as we said, long-term we're going higher. We have no other choice but to go higher because my signs and symptoms of the weekly have done exactly that. It forced the weekly to go from oversold towards overbought. And as it then slingshot and turned back over, it forced a low, a high, and a higher low. When this baby reversed and turned up, that means my monthly's up, my weekly gives me a higher low, it turns back up. It is supposed to make a higher high. Low, high, higher low, higher high. And during our little retracement last week, we said, yeah, you can sell it. As long as my daily and weekly are down, look for some opportunities to scalp it, but long-term work, no questions asked, going higher. And it was just a few days of a downside movement before the daily engaged. The weekly turned back up, and sure enough, we went soaring to a new higher high, as expected. Weekly, monthly, up. Of course it's going to make a higher high. So, John, in the coming days, we're going to look for another buy the daily slingshot. Don't ever stop buying the daily slingshot. You can buy it always, but especially when it forces a weekly to turn back up or the weekly is currently up. Definitely buy those daily slingshots. And eventually we'll talk about buying weekly slingshots for as long as the monthly stays up. So we're going to buy daily slingshots. Let me take this sell off for now. We're back to the buy zone. And as long as my monthly trend momentum and PAI up, weekly trend momentum and PAI up, simply buy the daily slingshot. And as long as my daily is either PAI flat to up, buy the 4-hour slingshots. So I'll add that on here as well on my 4-hour chart. Buy H4 slingshots. And that's why this software is unique, because by following my cycles, it gives me insights of when the retracement's over and when the trend is continuing. And by turning over and depressurizing, great. But if my daily is still up during this point, you know the 4-hour is going to slingshot and go up higher. And my daily's still up. What's the 4-hour going to do? It's going to turn and try to do it again, higher. And it should do it again and again. Then eventually the daily will turn like we had last week and give us a few days of some downside pressure, great. And if that doesn't in turn force this weekly to turn and hook back down, it stays up, then by all means, buy the daily slingshots over and over and over. So we'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Thanks again for your time and attention. And as Trish mentioned, we're very proud and happy for Peyton Manning and his family. As they said, it was the 50th Super Bowl, meaning 200 quarters. He won his 200th game to win the Super Bowl. He raised the number 18, and he's been in the NFL for 18 seasons. So I can't say I guarantee he's retiring, but what a way to go out. 18 seasons wearing the number 18, winning your 200th game on the 200th quarter of the Super Bowl 50. That seems like it's meant to be. All right? So just like that same scenario with Peyton Manning, it's meant to be. That's the direction of my cycling time frames. When they cycle, they give us signs and symptoms. So John, no questions asked when my daily re-engaged. It engaged from the purple line, good. And as it started to go higher, you know, uh-oh, I now have a daily trend momentum and PAI up. I shouldn't be looking to sell this. And especially as it went higher a couple of days, the weekly says, whoop, I'm going right back up. My trend momentum never crossed. That's a strong sign it's going to reverse. And sure enough, it did. So what's my next targets? Once I get my little sideways to lower chopping correcting action, I'm going to shoot for my 80 target up here. Okay? All right. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Take care.